On the night of November 15, 1942, the waters around Guadalcanal were blacker than ink, a vast, silent void broken only by the distant rumble of unseen explosions and the faint orange glow of burning ships fading on the horizon. It was 1 a.m. when the battleship USS Washington cut through that darkness, her decks wet from spray, her crew exhausted, soot-stained, and braced for whatever came next. Inside the dimly lit radar room, men stared at green screens that flickered like ghosts whispering from the future. And then, suddenly, the lines curved, the blip appeared. A massive contact, range 8,400 yards, bearing 330 degrees. The signature was too large to be a destroyer. It was a capital ship, a Japanese battleship moving unchallenged through the night. While this electronic eye saw clearly, everything around Washington was collapsing into chaos. The sea to the west was on fire. 4 American destroyers, Walk, Preston, Benham, and Gwynn, had already been swallowed by explosions or were fighting for their lives. Their last radio calls were filled with static, flame, and courage. One moment they were shielding the battleships from torpedoes. The next they were ripped apart by invisible long lance torpedoes that traveled farther and struck harder than any weapon the Americans had ever faced. And behind them, the battleship USS South Dakota, the powerful backbone of the formation, had been struck by electrical failures that cascaded through the ship, killing circuits, shutting down systems, and leaving her nearly blind. She was lit up by Japanese searchlights, hammered by enemy fire, burning, exposed, alone. Yet for the Japanese fleet, the night was even darker. They were masters of night fighting, trained relentlessly to see in darkness, to hit moving targets by the faintest flicker of light, to use torpedoes like a surgeon's scalpel. Their optics were their pride, huge polished rangefinders that could measure distance with breathtaking accuracy. But on this night, there was no moon, no firelight, no silhouette, just emptiness. And they had no radar. None of their instruments could penetrate the blackness. They were searching for shapes, glints, shadows, and finding nothing. Meanwhile, an American battleship was painting them on a radar screen as clearly as if a spotlight were shining right on their hull. The Japanese battleship Kirishima moved forward unaware she was being stalked. Her crew had no idea that only a few miles away a much larger American battleship had already locked her into a fire control solution that would soon tear her apart. On the bridge of USS Washington, silhouetted against the glow of radar repeaters and plotting tables, stood Rear Admiral Willis A, a man almost mythic in his ability to shoot, calculate, and command. Lee was calm, analytical, and utterly focused. For 20 minutes he had been tracking every shift of the Japanese formation. While others might have hesitated, might have doubted the unfamiliar numbers scrolling across their screens, Lee trusted them as if they were the voice of God. Every bearing line mattered, every range update mattered. To him, this was clarity, not confusion. He was a man raised on firearms, a former Olympic gold medalist shooter, who understood that precision came not from eyesight, but from data, discipline, and control. And tonight, he would prove what he had known for years, that radar was not an experiment, it was the future. In the years before, darkness belonged to Japan. Their destroyer crews had practiced for 2 decades, maneuvering silently through night seas, striking without being seen, overwhelming enemy forces who struggled to even spot them. The Americans had watched entire formations fall apart under this deadly style of warfare. At Savo Island, they lost 4 cruisers in barely half an hour, a disaster so complete that the water glowed with burning fuel as men swam among the flames. Back then, radar sets existed, but they were new, fickle, misunderstood. Commanders trusted their eyes instead, and their eyes failed them. Tonight, those mistakes would not be repeated. Tonight, an admiral would trust the machine. As the destroyers of the American screen died one by one, they sent their final reports over the radio, clipped, broken, but clear enough to show what they had done. They had absorbed the torpedoes meant for Washington. They had shielded her with their hulls and their lives. Their sacrifice turned this battle into a duel between a single American battleship and the surviving Japanese force still moving toward Guadalcanal. And so, when the last destroyer slipped beneath the waves, all eyes turned to the one ship that remained unbroken. Lee watched the radar operators quietly, hands folded behind his back. Washington was the most advanced ship in the Pacific that night. Her SG radar was so accurate it could spot a destroyer as easily as a lighthouse. Her Mark III main battery radar provided real-time range data unmatched by any Navy on Earth. And her Mark VIII analog ballistic computer, the beating brain of the ship, took that data and calculated firing solutions with frightening precision, adjusting for roll, pitch, wind, target motion, shell type, and even air density. But all that technology meant nothing without a commander who trusted it. Lee did. When the moment came, he gave the order without hesitation: open fire. What followed was not just gunfire. It was the sound of an era ending. Washington's 16-inch guns unleashed their fury, each shell weighing over a ton, each blast lighting up the sky like artificial lightning. The shock waves rolled across the water, rattling instruments and shaking the bones of every man aboard. These shells traveled through darkness, guided by numbers alone, and they found their target immediately. Kirishima took one blow after another, giant steel plates buckling, machinery tearing free, compartments flooding and burning at the same time. Her steering jammed first, leaving her helplessly circling like a wounded animal. Her gun turrets fell silent. Fires raged through the engine rooms. Men struggled to contain the damage but were overwhelmed by the sheer scale of destruction raining down with relentless accuracy. For 7 minutes, Washington hammered her, each broadside arriving with the inevitability of a heartbeat. Kirishima, once a proud battle cruiser turned battleship, could not fight back. It could not even aim. It was dying before it ever truly understood what had killed her. Eventually, her captain gave the only order left: abandon ship. Sailors jumped into the black water as their ship rolled onto her side, steam pouring from ruptured lines, ammunition cooking off deep inside. Slowly, it tipped, trembled, and slipped beneath the waves, leaving only fire and drifting debris behind. When the final echoes faded, the transformation was complete. In those 7 minutes, radar had proven itself beyond question. One battleship, fighting alone, had destroyed an enemy battleship, broken the myth of Japanese night invincibility, protected the fragile foothold on Guadalcanal, and opened the door to a new era in naval warfare where technology, not eyesight, decided who lived and who died. Darkness, once the greatest weapon of the Imperial Japanese Navy, now belonged to the nation that could see through it. The silent glow of the radar screen on USS Washington had been more powerful than any searchlight ever built. And from that night on, every navy in the world understood that the age of pure human senses was over. The future of war belonged to the machines and to the men bold enough to trust them.